Namaskaram to everyone. Hope you are all doing very well. So today we are going to read an remarkable book, Hindus in Hindu Rashtra by Dr. Anand Ranganathan. I mean, from the long left, who doesn't know him? Even the left. The Hindus in Hindu Rashtra, eight-class citizens and victims of state-sanctioned apartheid. This book is known not just for its depth, but also for its brevity. Like it's a short, solid uh, package, like how Dr. Anand sir himself is known as 30 seconds packet dhamaka, as we all know. Now, first, I will request you guys that every one of you, should buy this book. It's an amazing book. So you can buy it from Padega India. So it is available in English, Kannada, and Hindi. You can also buy it from Amazon also if you don't want to get it from Padega India. This is available like everywhere, and it keeps coming in Amazon's bestseller time to time. And another thing I want to add on is that every penny of royalty earned from this book goes for Hindu causes. Like Anand sir donates it to foundations and temples for Hindu causes. Let me just show you. Yes, so you can see here that every penny earned from this book is donated to Hindu causes like temples, foundations, schools, gurukulas. So please buy this book. Now we will start reading. I hope everyone can see the screen. So this is the book. Hindus in Hindu Rashtra, eight-class citizens and victims of state-sanctioned apartheid, Anand Ranganathan, the Bhagwa Rebels, November 2023. These are some endorsements, an eye-opener and an absolute horror. I hope you guys can see the screen, or should I zoom it? Okay, I have zoomed it a bit. To those who claim we are now living in a totalitarian fascist Hindu Rashtra, one must ask what kind of a Hindu Rashtra is this, where a billion strong Hindus have been, through our parliament, through our courts, our education system, and our constitution, reduced to not just second class, but rather eighth class citizens. So, how we are reduced to eighth class citizens, we will explore it further. What kind of Hindu Rashtra is this when Ram Navami and Hanuman Jayanti, Durga Puja processions, and even Garba celebrations are attacked and stoned with impunity? What kind of Hindu Rashtra is this where a sitting prime minister says minorities have the first right to resources? What kind of Hindu Rashtra is this where Hindus are forced to be refugees in their own land, where one can settle 40,000 Rohingya Muslims but not 7 lakh Kashmiri Hindus, the land's original inhabitants, where the judiciary says it is too late to prosecute those who raped, murdered, and ethnically cleansed lakhs of Hindus? What kind of Hindu Rashtra is this where Hindu temples are exclusively controlled by the state, where Hindus must beg for Waqf land to celebrate their festival, while the government, uh, pardon my pronunciation if I pronounce it wrong, while the government usurps hundreds of thousands of acres of temple land and is responsible for more than 1 lakh temples losing lakhs of crores in rental income. What kind of Hindu Rashtra is this where the Right to Education Act discriminates only against Hindus and their schools, forcing tens of thousands of them to shut down? What kind of Hindu Rashtra is this where monsters like Aurangzeb and Tipu, who perpetrated large scale Hindu genocides, are eulogized through state sponsored publications, naming of roads and cities, and organizing of festivals? So these are the 8 points, like stating that why we are eight class citizens. Okay, we have more. Oh, what kind of Hindu Rashtra is this? Mm, so what kind of Hindu Rashtra is this where a law was about to be enacted through, with only the Hindus would have been held guilty in a communal riot, even if they were in a minority, for example, in Kashmir. What kind of Hindu Rashtra is this, where court judgments like the Sabrimala and legislative enactments like the Hindu Code Bill purport to reform only Hindu religious practices, but they are not touch practices of other religions. And if they do, the decisions are promptly reversed, like in the Savanu case. What kind of Hindu Rashtra is this, where the Places of Worship Act continues to deny the Hindus the legitimate right to correct historical injustices and reclaim thousands of demolished temples? What kind of Hindu Rashtra is this, where the Work of Act gives overarching powers to Muslims to declare a 1500-year-old Hindu temple to be on Islamic land, where when Islam is only 1300 years old? If this is how a Hindu is rewarded in a Hindu Rashtra, he would much rather be in a Muslim Rashtra, because then at least there would be no pretense of equality. A kafir will get what he deserves. In this shearing commentary paint with clinical precision, the author states to smithereens once and for all the guilt-tripping, self-loathing fake narrative that Hindus have been duped with since independence. There is no pretense, no political correctness, only unvarnished truth that the Hindus are living under state-sanctioned apartheid. So, as if, I mean, come on, every one of us know who Dr. Anand Ranganathan is. So, no need. I think there is no need of his introduction, but still, I think you should read it. So, our author Anand Ranganathan obtained his BSc honors degree in chemistry from St. Stephen's College, Delhi, after which he left on a Nehru Centenary Scholarship for Cambridge, UK, where he obtained his BA triad in natural sciences, his MA, and his PhD. After a postdoctoral stint at Cambridge, Anand returned to India to join International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology, Delhi, where he ran his lab for 16 years. In 2015, he joined Special Center for Molecular Medicine, Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi, as an associate professor. His laboratory works in the area of directed evolution and pathogenesis, with special emphasis on tuberculosis and malaria. Anand is a consulting editor and columnist for Swarajya. He has written previously for News Laundry, DNA, and the News Minute. Apology. So I think we can ignore it. Here are the contents that we are going to read the full book, by the way. So I don't know how many episodes it will take, but this is a very pretty short book. As you can see, it's only of 131 pages. So forward. For far too long, independent India has not allowed. For far too long, independent India has not allowed the followers of its indigenous Bharatiya faith systems, the Hindus, the right to hold grievances, much less air them. After all, we are told Hindus are in the majority, so what possible grievances do we have? Despite the bloody partition of our sacred geography, Bharat, on overtly religious lines in 1947, Hindus are told that being in the majority is sin enough, which requires constant and unequivocal expressions of contrition in every sphere to reassure some minorities, those who identify themselves with Islamic invaders, settler colonizers, and Christian European colonizers, of their safety and dignity. This reassurance, as Dr. Anand Ranganathan rightly points out in this book, takes two forms: the positive, through political appeasement of minorities, and the negative, through legal yet unconstitutional discrimination of Hindus. As Anand bluntly observes in the book, while political appeasement continues unabated, or even under the current dispensation, it is the entrenched discrimination against Hindus through the instrumentality of the law that causes greater and long-term harm to the survival of Hindus. Accordingly, in this book, as a cultural Hindu, Anand has pressed into service his scientific bent of mind and formidable powers of analysis to identify 8 illustrations of discrimination against Hindus in a Hindu majority country. Discrimination that continues under a supposedly pro Hindu dispensation, from state control of Hindu religious institutions to arming a predatory and expansionist mindset, with the Waqf Act of 1995 to denial of the Kashmiri Hindu Holocaust to perpetual and relentless reformist scrutiny of the Hindu way of life to state endorsement of continuing Islamic triumphalism, to the Places of Worship Act 1991, Anand has chosen to lend his powerful voice to the ongoing Sanatani movement for reclamation of dharmic identity and space. In his, in his imitable style, through these examples, which are dealt with crisply and with a substantiation, Anand has demonstrated the central thesis of his exposition that Hindus were and continue to be A-class citizens regardless of who holds the reins of power, and that tokenism without long-term policy change is being used to keep the community in good humor. Understandably, to a non-Abrahamic indigenous community, which is an unconscious global minority and a deliberately fragmented national majority. Any political option that merely vocalizes its interests without effecting a policy change, despite wielding power, must come across as a breath of fresh air. However, given the increasing active legal encroachment and simultaneous comatose cession of Hindu space, both physical and mental, the time has come to call a spade and expect concrete steps to undo the continuing damage to Hindu interests. This book, which acts as a primer on the specific issues eating into the vitals of the Hindu community, is a must read. It serves as a fantastic starting point for those who wish to delve deeper into each of the issues enumerated by Anand and issues that, that are either related or of a similar nature. I think I thank Anand for undertaking this task and for adding to the growing literature of Indic or Dharmic Renaissance. I wish this book all success and I hope it reawakens more hearts and minds. J. Sai Deepak, Advocate, Supreme Court of India, again, another great scholar, fighter of for Hindu identity. Prologue. Ever since Mahatma Gandhi succeeded in controlling this nation's pulse, we have witnessed minority appeasement on an unprecedented scale, sometimes as virtue signaling, at other times as placation of victimhood. To illustrate but one instance of the extent to which he was committed to realizing his rapt vision while preaching to those affected by the pre-partition Hindu-Muslim violence, he urged Hindus should not harbor anger in their hearts against Muslims, even if the latter wanted to destroy them. Even if the Muslims want to kill us all, we should face death bravely. If they establish their rule after killing Hindus, we would be ushering in a new world by sacrificing our lives. Right from the Khilafat movement to the cushioning of the Mokla massacre, the Rangila Rasul incident to blatantly discriminatory state and central articles, and amendments to school curriculums to Hajj subsidy to ignoring the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act to Sahabano to the declaration by a sitting Prime Minister that minorities have the first right to resources every single time the minority has been appeased. It has only emboldened their leaders and political fronts for further extortion and blackmail. This has come at an enormous cost not only for their own community but also for the Hindus. The question, though, is not of appeasement. Yes, appeasement is discriminatory, of course, but worse than appeasement is active discrimination against the community not being appeased. Worse than appeasement of one community is appetite against other communities. Truth be told, appeasement may rankle, but Indians have learned to accept it. Even take it in, even take it in their stride. For they realize the reasons for appeasement and political, and those reasons are mollification of vote banks to win elections. Every political party cutting across ideologies and religious affiliations, all levels, indulges in appeasement. So while our Muslim population is 14.2% in the last 8 years, as many as 31.3% of homes under the Awas Yojana, 33% of floods under the Kisan Samman Nidhi Yojana, 36% of loans under the Mudra Yojana have gone to the Muslims. The BJP government has a Pradhan Mantri Sadi Shagun scheme exclusively for Muslim girls who complete their graduation before marriage. They will get 51,000, no questions asked. Housing, skilling, scholarship, sarkari jobs, salaries to Malvis. There is appeasement and preferential treatment meted out to minorities by every political party, including the BJP. The BJP recently even offered Christian senior citizens a free trip to Jerusalem if they voted for it. Fact is, Ram Rajya and Rom Rajya are interchangeable depending upon which way the wind is blowing. No, the issue is no, the issue, I repeat, is not for of appeasement. The issue is of apartheid. The issue is of state-sponsored, state-sanctioned discrimination against a particular community, and that community is the majority community, the Hindus. This work concerns not appeasement but apartheid. It concerns not dignity but discrimination that is now so entrenched in our constitution, our policies, our legal framework, our society, and our psyche that it makes Hindus not just second class citizens but rather eighth class citizens. That is happening in the so called Hindu Rashtra is profoundly ironical. Here, then, are eight reasons why Hindus are eighth class citizens in their own country. So, now the chapters are beginning. The first chapter is state control of Hindu temples. State controls of Hindu temples. State control of Hindu temples and their property is by far the largest, financially most damaging scam of independent India. That it not only continues but flourishes under the present government is a sad reflection of how politicians in our country treat Hindus. Even using the petroleum sector as a cash cow, even using the sorry, I lost it. Even using the petroleum sector as a cash cow pales in comparison to the loot and pillaging of Hindu temples. I do not know how and why it is beyond the limits of comprehension of the flag bearers of secularism that if we truly believe that religion should be kept out of the state, the corollary is equally applicable that the state should be kept out of religion. But is it? Secularism is totally separation of religion and state. Total, there are half a dozen articles and amendments and directive principles in our constitution that make it plural, not secular. In fact, the word secular was inserted in our framework by Indira Gandhi during the emergency. It was absent from Ambedkar constitution. Our state declares itself to be secular, but is seamlessly not so, regulating, governing, and controlling, as it does Hindu places of worship. Hindu temples have been for thousands of years the centers of worship, learning, community living, trade and economy, statecraft, and even defense. Every invader has known that to dismantle India, you need to first dismantle this temple ecosystem. And every invader has managed it. What sets the British apart is that they managed to also pass this dismantling on to those who they ruled and subjugated. And now the latter are continuing with the dismantling right from the Madras Revolution 7, 1817 to the Religious Endowments Act 1863 to the Religious and Charitable Endowments 1925 to the to the Hindu Religious and Endowment Act 1927 to Act 12 1935 to the Post-Independence Hindu Religious and Charitable Endowments Act 1951. Hindus have been at the receiving end of state-sponsored loot and pillaging of their places of worship. And when the 1951 legislation was challenged in the Madras High Court and subsequently the Supreme High Court, and most of the draconian provisions of the 1951 Act struck down, the Congress that was in power then quickly passed the Hindu Religious and Charitable Endowments Act 1959, snubbing the court decree. 2 years ago, the same Madras High Court dismissed a petition challenging the constitutional validity of this act, commenting that management of temples has got nothing to do with the right to worship. A Hindu can worship as much as he wants. But I asked if the Congress can bring in a legislation to control Hindu temples, one that still stands. Why cannot the present government bring in a legislation to free Hindu temples? A petition by Swami Paramatmananda and Swami Dayananda Saraswati is pending in the Supreme Court since 2012. For more than 10 years, they can allow midnight hearings for granting mercy to terrorists but cannot spare time for this. In this speaker, Swamiji gave the example of the Grand Ardhanarishwar temple in Trichungode, Tamil Nadu. Even though the temple generates more than a crore in annual income, The budget earmarked for conducting daily puja and performing rituals is a mere 1 lakh. Swami Dayananda Saraswati did not live to see the day his beloved temples would be wrested from state control. He passed away in 2015. Governments of just 10 states control more than 1,10,000 Hindu temples. Tamil Nadu Temple Trust owns 4,78,000 acres of temple land. Tamil Nadu government alone controls 36,425 temples and 56 mosques. For Karnataka, the figure is 34,563. Is this what you call secularism? The communist state of Kerala has five Devaswam boards: Travancore, Guruvayur, Cochin, Malabar, and Kudalmaniakam. Together, they manage 3,058 temples. The communists, for whom religion is supposedly the opium of the masses, are controlling Hindu temples and their boards, appointing board members on their whims and fancies. Many either belong to the Communist Party or are card-carrying members of it. Why? What business is it of the state to levy an administrative charge from anywhere between 5% to 21% on Hindu temples in the name of audit? What business is it of the state to dictate how many times a puja is to be conducted and who is to conduct it and who is qualified to be the priest and what is going to be the procedure for worship? And recently, also a Kerala High Court, I think, eh, okay, I think, recently a Kerala High Court verdict came that priests are to be based on qualifications on the same thing. Now, what business is it of the state to control tens of thousands of acres of temple land and then sit rent for it? The loss to Hindu temples on account of this alone is estimated over decades to be in lakhs of crores. According to the activist and litigant P.R. Ramesh, the Tamil Nadu government that should be earning a minimum of 6,000 crores per annum from the 2.44 crore square feet of temple land it controls earns a mere 58 crores, not even 1%. Kapileshwar temple is one of the richest temples in Tamil Nadu, owning more than 600 acres of prime property in Chennai. State records show it has 473 defaulters, with most of its land now encroached. And these are the estimate of only one state. Because of this loss in revenue generation, Hindu temples are not able to spend money on what they would really like to spend money on. Opening of Ved Pathsalas, schools, colleges, Gausalas, fellowships, and scholarships, orphanages, Hindu cultural and religious centers, all things and cause other religions and their places of worship spend their money on unencumbered. Only in India can you step aside and watch as the state appoints non-Hindus, Muslims like Firaz Hakim, instance like one Vangala Puri Anita on boards that control Hindu temples. Only here will we remain silent as temple idols are stolen, temple property auctioned, a whole temple driven ecosystem and way of life dismantled, assault on temples has turned into an assault on Hinduism itself. Imagine a Hindu priest or a politician controlling and dictating how Saint Francis Church or the Jama Masjid should be run. If that happens, perhaps judiciary would indeed conduct a midnight hearing, crying days of secularism. What is amusing is that the very same people who derisively who derisive who derisively call India a Hindu Rashtra are totally silent on state control of Hindu places of worship. They never stop to ask how on earth is this secularism. You can provide Hajj subsidy for decades, use taxpayers' money to host grand iftar parties, fund AMU that has only 1.4% Dalit students and 0.25% Dalit teachers, plunder state coffers to pay monthly salaries to tens of thousands of Maulvis, ask government-run EGC to fund minority institutions that keep 50% seats reserved for Christians, step in to overturn a Supreme Court judgment just to appease Muslims, lease thousands of crores exclusively from Hindu temples control tens of thousands of acres of Hindu temple land, spent hundreds of crores of taxpayers' money for the Kartarpur corridor. Are these not instances of the state interfering or succumbing to the demands of religion? Is this secularism? The great Mahakaleshwar temple, its revenue, its it's tightly controlled by the Madhya Pradesh state government through the Mahakaleshwar Mandir Act 1982. From appointing pujaris down to even the size of the prasadam laddu, down to South Tirupati's hundi collection from April to September 2022 alone amount to 782 crores. Now the government evaluation of its properties is out 7,123 crores valued at 85,705 crores. But secularism means this temple comes that well, secularism means this temples comes mm, I think under the Religious Institutions and Charitable Endowments Act until a High Court order that was issued recently. Andhra Pradesh Hindu Religious Institutions Act used to force temples that earn 5 lakh or more to pay 21.5% of their income to the endowments department. Now, the state has issued orders to set up the Dharmika Parishad with draconian powers to form temple trust boards and extend land lease. Is this secularism? More than 2 years have gone by. The Tamil Nadu government informed Madras High Court that 11,000 our okay, I think it is 11,999 under its control do not have enough money to perform even a single puja. But then again, I ask, largely overriding the Supreme Court verdict, if the Congress can bring in a legislation to control Hindu temples in 1959, one that still stands, why could not the present government bring in a legislation to override it in the last 9 years? Why has it brought in even more Hindu temples under state control than was achieved by the previous dispensation? Why does the present government float on constructing temple corridors like the one in Kasi at the cost of 939 crores when it could have relinquished control over Hindu temples and allowed the later to fund the hundreds of such corridors over the length and breadth of this country? As far as I am concerned, a Hindu temple should be publicly listed as a company. After all, it supplies a product that people buy, peace of mind and reassurance. And unlike other companies that need to constantly refine or come up with better products, a temple's product has not changed in a millennium and never will. Indians should be able to buy stake in it and make the temple richer. The richer it becomes through public trading, the more it will do for the society. Schools, hospitals, roads, orphanages, housing, and the list goes on. The more it does for the society, the more it will garner donations. With temples being publicly listed, the ready excuse of the government that we will control the temple after we relinquish control becomes untenable. Let the government tax the temple's wealth. No issues with that. At least the wealth generated by the temple will belong to the temple. At least then the Hindus will not be so blatantly discriminated in their own country. Okay, so the first chapter is finished. That is state controls of Hindu temple. Now I have to remind you once again that please buy this book. You can get this book from Padega India, or you can get this book from Amazon. You can get it from anywhere. And this book is available in English, Kannada, and of course Hindi. And every penny earned from this book, I mean the royalty, goes to temples, foundations, helping Hindus only, supporting and helping the Hindu cause. So please do buy the book. Now we will move to the next chapter. The next chapter is injustice towards Kashmiri Hindus. Terrorists are targeting Hindus settled in Kashmir, but not the Hindus visiting Kashmir. Tourist footfall in Kashmir this past year has been the highest ever, a staggering 16 million. Business is booming, registers are ringing, tourists are safe. They want the Hindus to flee, but then return later as tourists. They want the Hindus to come as tourists but fill their coffers, but not settle in their own land. As as Susil Pandit, a Kashmiri Hindu and himself a victim of ethnic cleansing, says, tourism in Kashmir funds jihad. The Hindus are funding their own demise. How on earth can we watch this unfold and not do anything about it? What kind of a country is this where one can settle 5,700 Rohingya Muslims in Jammu and Kashmir, but not 7 lakh Kashmiri Hindus, the original inhabitants of the land? There is no other way of saying it. We live in a nation of broken mirrors, where you possess neither a shadow nor a reflection if you are a Kashmiri Hindu. We live in a nation that waits for death to rid us of our remembrances. Please wait a little more, just a little. 30 years have gone, but we haven't progressed from those ugly, inhospitable transit camps that dot the Kashmir landscape at Shekhpura, Natnusa, Birwan, Beshu, Matan, and Hawi. In Anantnag's Veshu transit camp, Kashmiri Hindus who want to flee because they fear for their lives are being kept locked up. They cannot even step out to buy essentials like milk and medicines. Is this the kind of freedom promised to the natives of the land while the Rohingyas enjoy unfettered movement in the near vicinity? According to the data from the Home Ministry, only 17% of the promised houses for Kashmiri Hindus have been completed in the last 6 years. Only 5,928 Kashmiri Hindus have been appointed through the Prime Minister's job scheme. The number of Kashmiri Hindu refugees is 7 lakh, a figure derived from the data provided by the Government of India Ministry of Home Affairs. It states that 62,000 families fled Kashmir in the aftermath of the Kashmiri Hindu genocide, a woeful underestimate given that these are government figures of registered families tabulated to provide relief and rehabilitation. To an extent, the Kashmir Files, recent film by Vivek Agnihotri, has tried to reset the Kashmiri Hindu narrative, and that is why so many are rattled by it. Many prominent Kashmiri voices, politicians, intellectuals, writers, and poets, all those who stayed silent even as the Kashmiri Hindu genocide unfolded right before their eyes, called for a ban on the film. To them, I ask, can there be reconciliation without remembrance? Crime without compute, crime without crime without come up comeuppance. Pardon my pronunciation, please. Can there be death without deliverance? Can there be justice without Nuremberg? Why do they want to hide the truth about the Nadimark massacre that the film truthfully depicts, where terrorist Zia Mustafa lined up 23 unsuspecting Kashmiri Hindus and shot them point blank, and as he was escaping, he heard a baby cry, and his comrade coded, Ye Karnwan, Ye Karnaun Chupe, and then the baby became the 24th victim. Why do they want to hide this? Why do they want to hide the truth about Girija Tiko, who was a and cleaved in two by a mechanical saw while she was still alive? Why do they want to hide the truth about VK Ganjo, who hid inside a rice barrel when jihadists came looking for him after his Muslim neighbor informed on him? Ganjo was shot dead. Rice laced with his blood was fed to his wife. Why do they want to hide the truth about slogans raised from mosque on 19 January 1990? Relief, Relief, Shalif, Khalif, convert, run, or die. Death to Kafirs. Pandits go, but leave your woman behind. Nizam-e Mustafa. Why do they want to hide all this? And what is this order? What is this other side of the genocide that they demand should be shown? Yasin Malik, the assassin of squadron leader Hanna, loved Damalu. Bitta Karate, the killer of 42 Kashmiri Hindus, was the son of a shawl weaver. Zia Mustafa, the perpetrator of the Nadimark massacre, Was a compounder at a hospital? I will tell you why they want this truth to be hidden. Because they realize that the Kashmir Files is not just a film, it is a Prussian collection of memories of Girija, of Ganjo, of Dinanath, of tens of thousands of Kashmiri Hindus who were betrayed by their own friends. But they forget. They might have taken away from the Kashmiri Hindus their home, but they can never take away from their uh, but they can never take away from them their words. For their entrapment in a film may fool us into believing they have a physical form, a form that can be destroyed when the film is destroyed. But the words existed much before their presence did. Words never die, they always survive. In times of terror, we wrap them and hide them like our ancestors did, and it may take 30 or 300 or 3,000 years for them to be uttered again. But uttered again they will be. And when they are, their words will echo in the valleys of violence, where people only know how to light Molotov. These words will make them light theirs again. To be sure, I do not care about Islamists and the politicians forgetting those words. What bothers me is that our government, our judiciary, our society have forgotten them. How can these pillars of our democracy forget the cries of Girija and the laments of Dinanath? How, hearing them, those words, those haunting voices, one feels lost for hope, wondering whether that fabled wondering whether that fabled arc of moral universe would ever bend towards justice for Kashmiri Hindus. Remember that 5 years ago, the Supreme Court rejected reopening cases of criminal atrocities against Kashmiri Hindus because too much time had elapsed. You read it right. Justice is now weighted against where justice is now weighed against time. Elapsed time is elapsed justice. In December of 2022, the Supreme Court reiterated its previous stand of not opening cases of atrocities against Kashmiri Hindus. Hmm. It is not just the Supreme Court. It is not just the Supreme Court of India that is apathetic to the misery of Kashmiri Hindus, apathetic to the misery of Kashmiri Hindus. The misery is compounded by the rubbing of salt on the wounds of the victims by appeasing and eulogizing separatist leaders like Syed Shah Gilani, from journalists to politicians to judges to intellectuals. Anyone who has had anything to say or do about the Kashmir problem has had to break bread with this man, knowing fully well that he was equally responsible for the Kashmiri Hindu genocide and ethnic cleansing. He was treated unceasingly while he was alive, and he is fondly remembered even in death. Gilani was responsible for pushing Kashmir into religious fanaticism, communal bigotry, genocide, Hindu exodus, and untold misery. A man is known and understood best by his words. So let me quote the words of Gilani from his book Nave Hurriyat. India is a bigger enemy of Islam and Muslims than even Israel. Muslims are calm, wholly separate from the Hindus. Muslims are a complete separate nation on the basis of their religion, culture, civilization, customs, and practices, and thought. Their nationalism and the foundation of their unity cannot be based on the or cannot be based on their homeland, race, language, color, or economic system. The basis of their unity is Islam and Islam alone. Pakistan was created for the hegemony of Islam and for establishing an Islamic system. Pakistan is the land of the dreams of all Kashmiris because it was owned in the name of Islam. Accession to India would result in the Kashmiri Muslims having to live perpetually under under Hindu slavery. The entire struggle of the entire struggle of the Kashmiri people is for the sake of Islam and for accession to Pakistan. Kashmir must become an Islamic state. Our goal is the establishment of Islamic government. Our struggle is for the sake of Islam. Islam removes people from the slavery of people, but secularism makes the people slaves of value. The ongoing struggle against Indian rule in Kashmir is not an ordinary war, but rather a jihad. I plead with the Afghan Mujahideen to come forward to help liberate us from India, and by doing so express their bond of Islamic brotherhood and religious commitment. In the light of the Quran, it has now become incumbent on the people of Pakistan to engage in jihad in Kashmir. In fact, participating in the Kashmir jihad is now a binding duty incumbent not just on the Pakistani Muslims, but rather the entire worldwide Muslim Ummah. These words of Gilani give you a glimpse into his world, a world full of hatred for Indian and Hindus. I'm very clear, if you eulogize him or mourn him, you can never be trusted. Your allegiance does not lie with India. Your allegiance does not lie with your own people who have been ethnically cleansed and subjected to untold suffering and genocide. And when we speak of allegiance, we must not shirk away from the reality that every politician at the center, be it from the Congress, the Janata Dal, or the BJP, has flirted with those in Kashmir whose allegiance has always been suspected. Truth be told, Kashmir has been turned into a snake and ladder game. The ladders are told the ladders are provided by Pakistan and the snakes by Indians. I say Indians, but I wonder if these people think of themselves as Indians. Their first allegiance is to religion, second to Pakistan, third to China, and fourth to dynasty. It is a fact that Hyderabad could so easily have been what Kashmir is today, and fools in the media would be writing column yards on its struggle, but for one man, Sardar Patel. And Kashmir could so easily have been that what Hyderabad is today, but for two men, Nehru and Sheikh Abdullah, they set the boat down for the snake and ladder game, which their progenies have been playing ever since, making sure Kashmir's bubbling and ever present communal bigotry, ethnic cleansing, terrorism, and religious fanaticism do not enter the Indian narrative. They talk of human and religious rights, but when have you heard them speak out on the atrocities committed by Pakistan against the Ahmadiyas or the Balochs? Leave aside the Hindu and Christian minorities. When have you heard them speak out against China that has interned more than a million Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps and is feeding them poor? When have you heard them speak out against the brutal trampling of human rights of, okay, I don't know what it is, human rights of hundreds of Dalits, I guess, Gurkhas, women, Sikhs, refugees, and homosexuals in Kashmir because of Article 370 and 35A. But I will tell you, when they do speak out, when their power and authority are threatened, like when Sheikh Abdullah spoke out and claimed self-determination was his right and countries that did not support it were his enemies, or when Farooq Abdullah spoke out and I quote, they want to abolish 370 and we will remain silent. Inshallah, we will fight. We dare them. Allah would want that we gain independence from India. And when it becomes through the dynasty, Mrs. Mehbooba Mufti, one would be hard pressed to find a bigger hypocrite. From choosing a rape accused as an election candidate to threatening rivers of blood if 370 was abrogated, to shedding tears and mourning the death of terrorist Wani, to saying flags other than the tricolor will fly if 370 was abrogated, to threatening sedition by saying why would a Muslim majority state want to state with India, to wanting to introduce punishment according to Sharia law like death by stoning. In Kashmir, Mrs. Mufti was killed. In Kashmir, Mrs. Mufti has killed all methane spewing landfill summits. For example, for Kashmiri Hindus, to expect any sympathy or help from such leaders and the governments is quite frankly self defeating. Governments come and go, and we shout and we make 100 excuses. But we can't get away from the fact that Kashmiri Hindus are in exile. As Salman Rushdie expressed so poignantly in the satanic verses. An exile is a dream of glorious return. It is an endless paradox, looking forward but always looking back. An exile is a ball hurled high into the air. He hangs there, frozen in time, translated into a photograph, denied motion, suspended impossibly above his native earth, and he awaits the inevitable moment at which the photograph must begin to move and the earth reclaim its own. When will that photograph begin to move? Mind turns numb, but at the very thought that a nation is going about its business for 30 years while half a million Hindus have been reduced to refugees in their own land. Is this what a so called Hindu Rashtra is supposed to do for Hindus? We're the only country in the world that allows this across parties, across governments, right or left or center. 3 years since 2019, law and order incidents occurred in Kashmir. 3 years since 2019, the number is only 438. Terror attacks have reduced by more than 40% since 2018. But then, why is it that only 5,000 Kashmiri Hindus have been brought home? And of those few who have been, more than 25 have lost their lives through targeted killings and assassinations, making the Kashmir files tax-free was great. But remember your dharma. It is to make sure 7 lakh Kashmiri Hindus are brought home. Every year on 19 January, Sri Utpal Kaul, a Kashmiri Hindu activist and father of journalist Aditya Raj Kaul, brings out from underneath his mattress a crumpled piece of paper. It is a bus ticket with a date on it. The date is 19 January 1990. Every year he does that, and every year Aditya shows it to me. And I have always wondered, what does it mean for a father to have kept a bus ticket for 33 years? Is it to remind himself of that horrific journey, of his clasping tight his wife and a month-old Aditya being smuggled out in a jute bag while he sat lost, thinking of all that he had left behind? Was it to remind himself how he was counting every passing minute, counting every passing milestone to safety? Was it to remind himself of that blurred instant in the bus that contained within it the image of his struggles ahead? Or was it to remind himself that he needed to be strong, that this was a cruel, unforgiving country, that his struggles were his alone, and that he would have to fight them all by himself? Was that bus ticket kept under his mattress all this while? Did that bus ticket take the weight of his unbound sorrow every night, of every day, of every month, of every year since 19 January 1990? No. He kept it to remind himself of that from now. He kept it to remind himself from now on, in his mind, that bus ticket was his adversary, and he shall look at him straight in the eye and tell him that he was down but not out, that he was undefeated, that he shall pick himself up and find work and educate his children and bring food to the table and greet every new day as he did the last, with a smile on his face, that he shall not be conquered. And on the appointed day, on 19th January, when the father slips his hand under the mattress and finds the bus ticket and hands it to his son, he could almost have said, "Son, I pass this on to you now. It is yours. Now you take care of it, for it must be preserved for our future generations. They must never forget that a man's body may be forced to flee, but never his spirit. They must never forget who we are and where we come from, and where we came from. We are Kashmiri Hindus, son. We are Kashmiri Hindus, son, and we stand today on our feet. And one day we shall take the journey back home." Time is running out. A refugee accepts his fate and humiliation that comes along with it, for he must worry about his new life. He forgets how to complain, and that is a fatal mistake. Arundhati Roy, that totem of the left, once cushioned the crimes of the Maoists by calling them Gandhis with guns. Well, Kashmiri Hindus are the Gandhis without guns, and that is the singular reason why no one cares for their plight. Because this nation hears complaints through the barrel of a gun, not the ink of a pen. This nation believes inaction is a medicine. It believes time heals. It believes wounds do not fester. It believes that exile never return. This nation wait for death to rid its people of their remembrances. This nation wishes the Kashmiri Hindus all happiness and joy in the afterlife. Kashmiri Hindus are the Jews, but unfortunately, India is not Israel. They call Kashmir the Switzerland of the East. Wrong. It is the Srebrenica of the East. And it will remain so till such time every Kashmiri Hindu is returned home. So this is the end of the second chapter. Now I shall remind you again. Now I shall remind you again that please purchase this book. You will definitely you will love this book actually. Okay, so you can purchase it from Padega India or Amazon or whichever platform it has listed. You can purchase it from there. Every single penny earned from this book, okay, from this book, like the official version, not any pirated copy. Every penny earned from it, and from this book, the royalty goes to Hindus, it goes to temples and for foundations, which supports and helps Hindus and their cause. So please do buy the book. Now we shall continue with our reading. The third chapter, that is the Waqf Act 1995. Waqf is the third largest landowner in India after defense and the railways, with much of its land holding rather amusingly pre-independence and endowment of the insidious give and take between the British and the Muslims they desired to pacify. Indeed, many of the Waqf land holdings go as far back as 1857. 77% of Delhi is on Waqf land, including, including the Delhi High Court. Central Vista, which has recently been renovated and on whose hallowed turf new government buildings will shimmer and glisten, is on Waqf land. CGO complex and Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium are on Waqf land. Only three things are certain in an Indian's life: death, taxes, and that knowingly or unknowingly he ends up walking every day on Waqf land. Over time, many of these work properties were taken over by the government, but then inexplicably, or perhaps not, one of the last decisions of the outgoing UPA government in 2014 was to give 123 prime central Delhi properties to Waqf and withdraw its claim on them. These prime real estate properties are from the time of our independence and were endowed to the government by the departing British. Their status remained unchanged for 70 years until 5 March 2014, when the departing Congress decided to endow them to the Waqf. Even the Delhi High Court judges have opined that Waqf land is Allah's and Allah's alone, and that the government cannot be the owner of this land. It is not just government buildings that the Waqf claims its property. Someone's houses is on Waqf land. The Waqf board lays claim to 3,54,913 estates and 8,66,035 properties comprising uh, 8 lakh 2,000 acres of Indian land, with UP having the highest share of 2 lakh 13,833 Sunni Waqf Board properties and 15,386 Shia Waqf Board properties. This data is from the Waqf Management System of India, whose motto, if you visit their website, is once Waqf, always Waqf. One will, if they were to dig deeper, find that this grandiose motto is not the idea or thinking of the Waqf Board or any of its members. It is, in fact, the verbatim exclamation of the Supreme Court in its 1998 judgment, case number 4372 SCR 398. And the name of the honorable judge who said this iconic line, Justice Dr. Anand. Waqf essentially means that any donated property belongs to Allah in perpetuity. In perpetuity, Waqf decides any property adjudged by Muslim law as pious, religious, or charitable, and therefore fit to be labeled as waqf. In other words, waqf is inalienable and irrevocable. If you think this is a figment of my fertile imagination, let me quote directly from a waqf code document. Waqf is a voluntary, permanent, and irrevocable dedication of a portion of one's wealth in cash or kind to Allah. Once a waqf, it never gets gifted, inherited, or sold. It belongs to Allah, and the purpose of the waqf always remains intact. The fruits of the waqf may be utilized for any Sharia compliant purpose. The Waqf boards are, in case you were wondering, headed and constituted exclusively by Muslims. If that was not discriminated enough, let me run you through some sections of the Waqf Act 1995. Section 4 bestows on the Waqf Survey Commissioner the authority and power like that of a civil court. Besides, the entire cost of the surveying is to be borne by the state. So, in essence, a Hindu's property, once declared as Waqf property, wholly arbitrarily will be surveyed by Waqf, and the cost incurred on this count will be paid for by the Hindu taxpayer. And people say we are living in a fascist Hindu Rashtra. Section 40 gives the Waqf power to decide if your land is Waqf or not. In fact, if your property is laid claim to by Waqf, it is your responsibility to disprove its claim until such time you disprove it is Waqf land. Decision if a property is Waqf property. One, the board may itself collect information regarding any property which it has a reason to believe to be Waqf property, and if any question arises whether a particular property is Waqf property or not, or whether a Waqf is a Sunni Waqf or a Shia Waqf, it may, after making such inquiry as it may deem fit, decide the question. The decision of the board on a question under subsection shall, unless revoked or modified by the tribunal, be final, where the board has any reason to believe that any property of any trust or society registered in pursuance of the Indian Trust Act 1882 or under the Societies Registration Act 1860 or under any other such act is Waqf property. The board may, notwithstanding anything contained in such act, hold on hold an inquiry in regard to such property, and if after such inquiry the board is satisfied that such property is Waqf property, call upon the trust or society, as the case may be, either to register such property under this act as Waqf property or so cause why such property should not be so registered, provided that in all such cases notice of the action proposed to be taken under this subsection shall be given to the authority by whom the trust or society had been registered. The board shall, after duly considering such cause as may be shown in pursuance of notice issued under subsection, pass such orders as it may think fit, and the order so made by the board shall be final unless it is revoked or modified by a tribunal. Section 54 gives the Waqf the power to declare even encroacher. Removal of encroachment from Waqf property. 1. Whenever the chief executive officer considers whether on receiving any complaint or on his own motion that there has been an encroachment on any land, building, space, or other property which is Waqf property and which has been registered as such under this act, he shall cause to be served upon the encroacher a notice specifying the particulars of the encroachment and calling upon him to show cause before a date to be specified in such notice as to why an order requiring him to remove the encroachment before the date so specified should not be made, and shall also send a copy of such notice to the concerned mutawali. The notice referred to in subsection shall be served in such manner as may be prescribed. If, after considering the objections received during the period specified in the notice, and after conducting an inquiry in such manner as may be prescribed, The chief executive officer is satisfied that the property in question is work property and that there has been an encroachment on any such work property. He may make an application to the tribunal for grant of order of eviction for removing such encroachment and deliver possession of the land, building space, building space, or other property encroached upon to the mutawalli of the waqf. The tribunal, upon receipt of such application from the chief executive officer for reasons to be recorded therein, make an order of eviction, directing that the work property shall be vacated by all persons who may be in occupation thereof or any part thereof, and cause a copy of the order to be affixed on the outer door or some other conspicuous part of the work property, provided that the tribunal may, before making an order of eviction, give an opportunity of being heard to the person against whom the application for eviction has been made by the chief executive officer. If any person refuses or fails to comply with the order of eviction within 45 days from the date of affixture of the order under subsection, the chief executive officer or any other person duly authorized by him in this behalf may evict that person from and take possession of the work property. So let me get this straight. The work decides in its wisdom that a property is work property. It then serves a notice to the encroacher. Subsequently, it takes the matter to the work tribunal, and the tribunal decides on the nature of the said property and orders eviction. The terror. Okay, so I forgot to screen share it. The terror continues paragraph after paragraph, sections after sections. Section 85 states, no suit or other legal proceedings shall lie in any civil court in respect of any dispute, question, or other matter relating to any work property, or other matter relating to any work property, or other matter which is required by or under this act to be determined by a tribunal. In fact, even the Supreme Court declared in 2019 that the Civil Court of India has no jurisdiction in the matter of a suit pertaining to a work property. Let me remind you of the ground reality. Work tribunal decision can only be overturned by a long and financially draining legal process. The work knows this. In a country where 4 crore cases are pending, harassment through legal procedure, and that stems legal procedure that stems from the inner offices of an all-appeasing government, executive and judiciary is a sword that is sharper and more potent than Khalid's. How, one may then ask, has the Work Act 1995 that is patently unfit to be applied to, leave alone a mental asylum, has been applied to a nation of 1.3 billion people, assuming that assuming the two are not one and the same. Remember, there is nothing in the act that safeguards the religious properties of Hindus being appropriated by the work. This itself violates not only the principles of natural justice, but also multiple articles of our constitution, beginning from articles 14, 15, and 25. BJP's infant terrible Aswini Kumar Upadhyay recently filed a petition in the Supreme Court challenging the validity of the Work Act. His plea was that the Work Board has Muslims, MPs, MLAs, legislators, civil servants, lawyers, and scholars as its members, and they are remunerated by the taxpayer. Even though the state does not collect money from mosques, how is this secularism? The Supreme Court refused to entertain the plea and threw it out. The judge called the petition abstract. That judge is now and will remain for the next many years the Chief Justice of India. I guess now he has been changed. The mayhem continues. Here is section 28 that outlines the power of the district magistrate, additional district magistrate, and subdivisional magistrate to implement that directions of the work board, subject to the provisions of this act. and the rules made thereunder, the district magistrate, or in his absence, an additional district magistrate or subdivisional magistrate of a district in the state, shall be responsible for implementation of the decisions of the board, which may be conveyed through the chief executive officer and the board may, wherever it considers necessary, seek directions from the tribunal for the implementation of its decisions. Then there is section 107. Now in law, there is something called the statute. Now there is something called the statute of limitation. That is, the time period for acting on a dispute or filing of a suit is set by law, and this law is enacted through the Limitation Act, 1963. But wait, Section 107 states Act 36 of 1963 will not apply for recovery of work properties. Nothing contained in the Limitation Act 1963 shall apply to any suit for possession of immovable property comprised in any work or for possession of any interest in such property. What this means is that the Waqf can lay claim to and recover any property it wishes to without having to worry about the passage of time. The Waqf, as you would have realized by now, is a parallel government wholly sanctioned by our own government. It has, through its overarching board, its own legislature, through its surveyors and estate and compliance officers, its own executive, and through its tribunal, its own judiciary. And through this act, through its application, a message is sent to every citizen of this country: we are a special people, and that message is all pervasive and uncompromising. It is this message that allows Muslims, even rational, logical, and educated Muslims, to claim that the Gyan Wapi mosque built atop the Grand Kasi Vishwanath temple is on Waqf land. So was the Grand Kasi Vishwanath temple demolished by Aurangzeb, and as confirmed through his own certified biography, Masir Alamgiri, also on Waqf land? It is this message that allows Muslim to claim that the 1500-year-old iconic Manindyavalli Chandrasekhara Swami temple in Tamil Nadu is on Waqf land. I ask you, how can a 1500-year-old Hindu temple be adjudged by Waqf to be on Islamic land when Islam is only 1300 years old? The more you read on Waqf, the more you realize that bulk of its muscle is flexed, not only through the draconian Waqf Act, but also throughout a letter that the former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi wrote during the emergency, ordering all states to strictly obey her diktats. If the work properties she wrote have gone into adverse possession of state government departments, the Waqf board could well start legal proceedings against the concerned departments. And where costly buildings have been put up by the state on Waqf land and their vacation is not feasible, the state government may enter into permanent leases with Waqf boards after paying to the boards the bulk of the market value as premium. See further wrote that work boards have sent governments list of work properties in the possession of government department. She urged to see that these are dealt with as suggested above. A periodic review should be undertaken and a monthly report to be sent to her. Work as ordained by the committee and as agreed to by the center should be treated differently from individual landlords and therefore exempt from rent control acts. The Waqf only asked the Congress to bend. The Congress decided to crawl. In fact, during the dying days of the UPA, the Waqf Properties Eviction of Unauthorized Occupants Bill 2014 was tabled in the Rajya Sabha, giving overarching and draconian powers to the Waqf eviction officer to demolish whatever it considered was an encroachment of the Waqf property. To this tabled bill, not only was every order made by the work estate officer to be considered final, it could also not be called into question in any original suit or application, and no injunction could be granted by any court against it. But things did not just stop at injunction. The bill barred any Indian court to have jurisdiction to entertain any suit concerning the eviction of any person from any work property or demolition of any structure or fixture from any work property. Luckily for us, encroachers of Allah's land, the hard Congress went away in 2014 was replaced by the soft Congress. Appeasement continues, if not through this draconian bill, at least in the interim through the 1995 Act. That the Waqf Act 1995 is blatantly communal, discriminatory, unconstitutional, and draconian is not in contention. One only must read its clauses and sections to realize what a rotten hand Hindus have been dealt with through this act. What adds to the absurdity is the fact that this is now a perpetual motion machine, gobbling up land, property, and government largesse with speed and stealth, with every passing day insatiable in its appetite, as though out to prove Dr. Ambedkar and his profound prophecy of Muslims under divine obligation to convert Dar al Harb to Dar al Islam. It is no longer an arcane endowment that is centuries old. It is an ever growing mutant, having perfectly adapted to the appeasing and virtue signaling state. Hindus who, during the partition, fled what is now Pakistan and came to India, their property was promptly confiscated and either distributed to the Muslim citizenry or taken up by the government of Pakistan. Not so the case with the Muslims who from India went over to Pakistan. Their property was handed over to Waqf. As a result, the Hindu refugees who came to stay on this land are paying rent that is subject to arbitrary increases. And the injustice continues. Hindus now must beg for Waqf land to celebrate their festival, as is what happened recently in Karnataka. However, governments, both the have center and states have usurped hundreds of thousands of acres of temple land and are responsible for more than 1 lakh temples losing lakhs of crores in rental income. There is no such act for Hindus. There is no such act for Sikhs. There is no such act for Christians. There is no such act even for Muslims in Muslim majority countries like Turkey, Sudan, and Egypt. Welcome to the Islamic Republic of India. This is not our future. This is now our present. Okay, so we'll move to the RTA. So before we move to the RTA, I want to buy this book. I get it from Amazon or it is from on from this book. The royalty, the author, like said, Dr. Anand Ranganathan ji donates it to foundations, temples that supports and helps in the cause for Hindus. So please buy this book. Well, let me just have a sip of water. RTE Act. A 11 religious, okay, 11 religious schools are equal, but some are less equal than others. This paraphrasing of George Orwell's parodic commandment, this paraphrasing of George Orwell's parodic commandment typifies the thinking of the state when it comes to Hindu-run schools and educational institutions. The Right to Education Act, or the RTE, is the proverbial Moses stuff that makes sure this commandment is obeyed. The RTE in itself is a worthy undertaking that states as its preamble an act to provide for free and compulsory education to all children of the age of 6 to 14 years. But in terms of discrimination, at once casual and concrete, very few acts match up to the RTE. The act was passed by the Congress-led UPA government back in 2009. Tellingly, it remains in force in the present-day Hindu Rashtra. Simply put, the RTE continues to destroy Hindu schools and institutions. Perhaps that is the overarching goal of secularism to allow the prospering of every other religion, its belief systems, its way of life, its cultural values, its educational methods, its wisdom, its books and scriptures, except Hinduism. And after Hinduism is dead, we will remember it fondly and exalt its glory like we do for every other extinct civilization and culture. Taxidermy fetish is what it is. There are numerous provisions under the RT that selectively apply only to non-minority schools. For example, you cannot have a capitation fee or screen students you want admitted. The reimbursement of fee by the government is never timely, forcing the school to go under debt, forcing the school to go under debt. Even such up, you have to have a government mandated selection procedure for teachers, one that includes a quota-driven recruitment. There are several building and infrastructural restrictions and requirements that a school must comply with. The list is endless, but the overarching draconian provision of the RT that is proving to be a death knell of privately run Hindu educational institutions is its order that 25% of the seats must be allocated to children belonging to the economically weaker sections or EWS and other disadvantaged groups. This does not apply to minority schools. So the the ones of serving the economically weaker section of our society rests only on Hindus. So the onus of serving the economically weaker section of our society rests only on Hindu-run schools, but not on Muslim or Christian-run institutions. In 2017, 3 years after the heralding of the Hindu Rashtra, the National Independent School Alliance (NISA) compiled a list of schools in 12 states that had been asked to shut down by the governments for non-compliance to the RT's draconian provisions. And as the RT primarily applies to non-minority schools, one can safely assume these were Hindu-run schools. As many as 7,000 schools in Maharashtra, the bastion of Hindavi Swaraj, had been told to shut down. We need to understand that the threat of closure does not just intimidate the school, it scares the pupils and the parents too. It has been 5 years since NISA implored the center to relook at the RT and ease the draconian anti-Hindu scriptures. The Hindu Rashtra government is silent. Now, as the famous lines go, जिसका कोई नहीं उसका तो खुदा है यारो ये मैं नहीं कहता किताबों में लिखा है यारो. Which book, you may ask? Well, in a secular nation, we have only one book to fall back on. Which book, you may ask? Well, in a secular nation, we have only one book to fall back on. So let us look at our constitution, because if discrimination is cast in stone, we must at least examine the stone. The stone to begin with is Article 30. I now quote verbatim: all minorities, whether based on religion or language, shall have the right to establish and administer educational institutions of their choice. 1A. In making any law providing for the compulsory acquisition of any property of an educational institution established and administered by a minority referred to in clause 1, the state shall ensure that the amount fixed determined by or under such law or for the acquisition of such property is such as could not restrict or abrogate the right guaranteed under that clause. The state shall not, in granting aid to educational institutions, discriminate against any educational institution on the ground that it is under the management of a minority, whether based on religion or language. A direct fallout of not only the structures of this article but its words and composition is that Muslims in Kashmir, Sikhs in Punjab, and Christians in Nagaland are still considered a minority and can run schools that will not be subject to the RTE. In reality, these communities are a majority in the respective states. Let us now look at the Article 28. The central and state governments have discovered enough loopholes in it to violate this article at will to placate their vote bank. The article states, no religion instruction shall be provided in any educational institution wholly maintained out of state funds. Nothing in clause 1 shall apply to an educational institution which is administered by the state but has been established under any endowment or trust which requires that religious instruction shall be imparted in such institution. No person attending any educational institution recognized by the state or receiving aid out of state funds shall be required to take part in any religious instruction that may be imparted in such institution or to attend any religious worship that may be conducted in such institution or in any premises attached thereto unless such person or if such person is a minor, his guardian has given his consent thereto cultural and educational rights. Coupled with this, there is Article 26 of our Constitution that ordains freedom to manage religious affairs subject to public order, morality, and health, and that every religious denomination or any section thereof shall have the right to establish and maintain institutions for religious and charitable purposes, to manage its own affairs in matters of religion, to own and acquire movable and immovable property, and to administer such properties in accordance with law. Read both articles side by side and you realize what you are against. Let me now read Clause 5 of Article 15 of our Constitution that was brought in by the UPA government in 2006 as the 2093rd Amendment. In Article 15 of the Constitution, after Clause 4, the following shall cause the following clause shall be inserted, namely clause 5. Nothing in this article or in subclause of clause 1 of Article 19 shall prevent the state from making any special provision by law for the advancement of any socially and educationally backward classes of citizens or for the scheduled caste or the scheduled tribes insofar as such special provisions relate to their admission to educational institutions, including private educational institutions, whether aided or unaided by the state, other than minority educational institutions referred to in Clause 1 of Article 30. Now, Article 15 that prohibits discrimination on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth already had Clause 4 that allowed states to make special provision for the advancement of any socially and educationally backward classes of citizens or for the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes, but it did not exclude minority institutions, and that puts the onus on minorities to also contribute to the society and work towards the upliftment of our socially and educationally backward classes of citizens or for the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes. This was unacceptable to the Congress as well as, I must add, the present government because this amendment was passed with the later support. I hope you can see it clearly now that 93rd Amendment is the staff meant to establish the commandments of Articles 26 and 30. And it is because of the brandishing of the staff that the RT does not apply to minority run schools, bearing wearing a ubiquitous exception of a ban on corporal punishment uh, at an Indian schools must compulsorily follow. Oh, that an Indian school must compulsorily follow. To summarize the chain of events, the government applies RTE rules selectively to Hindu-run schools, orders them to maintain a 25% EWS quota, does not provide fee reimbursement on time, so much so that back in 2019, as many as 4,000 schools threatened to go on a strike against the delays in fee reimbursement. Unconcerned governments threaten schools and blackmail them with land occupancy provisions just to escape paying the reimbursement. Schools are forced to hike fees for all pupils in order to escape debt and closure. The fee increase forces Hindu parents to shift their children to other schools. More and more Hindu parents take their children away from Hindu schools, and these children are then welcomed by schools run by minorities. And by virtue of the religious obligations and directive principles of the Constitution laid down for the believers, where preaching, proselytization, and conversion are religious duties, these children are inevitably, sometimes, uh, sometimes subtly, sometimes directly, put under pressure to convert. Meanwhile, Hindu schools are forced to close down. A recent report estimates that the RTE is responsible for the closure of more than 10,000 Hindu run schools. A 2017 CAG report noted that the release of funds by the center to schools was sometimes delayed by as much as 307 days. Such delays not only led to outright closure of schools, they also result in abandoning any plans for expansion or upgradation of infrastructure. Ironical because these are the criteria to be fulfilled by schools under the RTE. More importantly, even if the government pays the EWS people fee, I- albeit a year late, the school would still have to sell out for textbooks, uniforms, transport, and other ancillary things every school going child needs, especially when his parents are underprivileged. The authority that decides if a school is exempt from the RTE is the National Commission for Minority Education Institutions, NCMEI. Shockingly, this body, although quasi-judicial in its directives, cannot have a Hindu as its member. In fact, BJP leader Ashwini Upadhyay filed a PIL seeking to challenge the NCMEI Act and to allow Hindus to be declared as minorities in the states and union territories where they are, well, minorities. This is logical and rational, especially because it has wide ranging repercussions on the survival of Hindu run schools in the states and UTS. Hindus are now a minority in Jammu and Kashmir, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, Punjab, Nagaland, Meghalaya, Ladakh, and Lakshadweep. But one entity has opposed the petition, calling it frivolous. No, that entity was not the Congress or the church or Darul Uloom. That entity was the central government. The government called his petition untenable and misconceived in law and told the court that the petition was not in larger public or national interest. The center backed the same discriminatory National Commission for Minorities Educational Institutions, NCMEI, under whose act only Muslims, Christians, Jains, Sikhs, Buddhists, and Parsis are listed as minorities. Following outrage, the present government has only now asked more time from the court to think on the matter. Meanwhile, Hindu run religious and linguistic schools continue to close under the burden of discriminatory RTE rules. If there is only one thing more cruel and not allowing Hindus temples to run their own educational institutions without fear of state intervention and control. It is not allowing Hindus to run their own without fear of state intervention and control. And if there is only one thing more cruel than the fact that both these cruelties are being subjected on the Hindus, it is that they are being subjected by the Hindus. Belonging to a Hindu government in a Hindu Rashtra. Okay, so the fourth chapter is also complete. So we'll keep it up to this only. We have read up to 49%, like almost 50%. The other 50% will complete the next day. I think we'll continue this again tomorrow. Mhm. Okay, so how to stop missionary work in India? Uh, missionary work, to stop missionary work is very difficult, as you know. They have external support, like outside of India. But we can, if we do not stop missionary support overtly, but we can absolutely spread our works, our scriptures, and our culture by freeing our by freeing our temples from government, as Anand Ranganathan points out in this book itself. We need to do something to stop missionary work in India and Nepal. Absolutely, especially as Anand said, quote that Meghalaya, Nagaland, well, yeah, the entire northeast like, is whole gone. I mean, Hindus are like a more minority there, where Christians are minority in any other state. This is actually scary, especially on the border states. Also, like try to go that far. Like let's say take Bihar, for example. Like in Bihar also, go to Bodh Gaya. Okay, as people know that Gaya or Bodh Gaya, there the missionary work is rampant. I mean, you can, matlab, families after families are being converted. Bihar, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, everywhere, or even like not in any outskirts or isolated area, but on the very heart of Hindus, like Bodh Gaya or let's say any ancient temple is there, like that neighborhood. The missionaries are on rampage mode, converting Hindus. So if we, I mean, I do not want to blame the government, or I do not. I do not have any hopes from the government. We Hindus shouldn't have any hopes from the government. Uh, Rather, we should work from our sides only to stop this whole war. Like our brothers and sisters, our brothers and sisters are only converting and making their life hell, and they will be the ones who will again convert others in the future. Another thing, like what we need to do is like boycott them uh, socially, like it is to be earlier. Just boycott them socially, like make them isolated. So, like at the and I'm not saying this just like that because this has actually happened. Like people have socially boycotted them, and they actually did ghar wapsi. Like I think in Andhra Pradesh it has happened, and in Telangana too, and in Tamil Nadu also. So this works. So social boycott works, and of course we continue from our side opposing them and giving them resistance as much as we can. But for that we need money. I mean, we need lots and lots of money, uh, and that can easily come from the temples if only the governments free our temples. Because अभी तो उस हमारे टेम्पल्स मंदिरों के पास वो पूजा पूजा करने का ही पैसा नहीं है. As you can see, Anand Ranganathan quotes like if the temple generates 1 crore per income as annual, it gets merely 1 lakh for pujas and other accessories needed to conduct the puja. Or any then after puja there is a specific festival being held in the temple. How can one sustain in mere 1 lakh rupees? The temple generates 1 crore. Or also the famous the Tamil Nadu temple that generates 6,000 crore but gets not even the 1% of it, that's 60 crores. It gets only 58 crores. And these are seriously too pathetic. Uh, we should really think about this. Now, before we go, please buy this book. Now, how do you think about this? That if we buy this book, and the royalty goes to temples, foundations, like Dr. Anand Ranganathan donates them to temples and foundations supporting Hindus and Hindus' cause. So please buy this book. You can buy it from Padega India or Amazon. Let me give you the link. Let me paste you the link here in the chat. Okay, so this is you can buy it from here or Padega India. Please buy this book. And okay, I think there are no further questions. So today, this is all. We'll again continue next day. So till then, bye bye, take care, and Jai Sri Ram, Vande Mataram.